Gerald Washington versus Eddie Chambers. I'm Teekosey and this is with just 15 defeats. Teekosey here from With Just 15 Defeats. We're here for the second video of the day, and today we're going to be discussing Gerald Washington versus Eddie Chambers. Now, first of all, there's going to be a poll pop up throughout this video. If you can take part, it's as simple as just clicking yes or no. Then watch the video. If you have any problems with it, if you disagree, leave a comment below. I want to hear from you and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So, Washington versus Chambers. Not a bad matchup on paper. We've got the promising talent in Washington and the veteran in Eddie Chambers. Now, what in fact happened, in my eyes, was a shutout. Washington won the fight very, very clearly. Now, Gerald Washington is a big guy. He's almost like a poor man's Deontay Wilder at the moment. I actually like Gerald Washington. He's a huge guy, very muscular physique. He's got an incredibly wide stance, and he's got bouncy, springy movements, and he darts in and out, side to side. He covers a lot of canvas. He covers a lot of canvas, and he has relatively fluid hand movement, and he has a persistent jab. Okay, persistent jab. So moving into the actual fight, as I say, personally I think Washington, it was a shutout. People might disagree with me, but I think it was a shutout for Washington. For the first 5 minutes of this fight, it was completely one-sided, and in fact, the first 4 rounds, Washington won relatively easily, and took almost no damage coming back. You were watching Chambers' style when he had both hands up, high guard, and he was moving forward. He was pressing, but he wasn't following that up with a lot of shots. So whilst he was pressing, he was allowing Washington to kind of move around the ring and pop out the jab consistently. So whilst he was moving backwards, he was popping the jab, and he was really controlling the fight. And you have to assume that Eddie Chambers' game plan was that he was hoping that Washington would tire. And this is something that Washington is going to have to deal with, because, as I say, he's a very muscular guy. The muscular guys are always the guys that are going to tire. And I think to a certain degree, Washington, over the course of the fight, he did tire in the middle rounds. This was only an 8-round fight, but he did seem to tire between the four to six, maybe beginning of the 7th round. But then he had a bit of a second wind. But around about the fifth round, the 5th round, sorry, Eddie Chambers, he did decide to increase. So he'd already lost, for my money, he'd already lost 4. He'd already lost half the fight, and then he decided to up his own rate. But the problem is that he was only doing singular shots. He was moving forward and trying to land a big bomb, and the problem is that Eddie Chambers doesn't really possess a big bomb. So it was a real strange tactic from him. Throughout the fight, you could see that he struggled with the distance, the distance and the movement of Washington. And as the fight progressed, Washington was landing in combinations. They were interesting combinations, but you could see they were so weak. There was no chance of him stopping Eddie Chambers. I knew that this would go the distance. There was no impact to Chambers. He just continued to press him forward, and you could see it wasn't hurting him in the slightest. So, does Gerald Washington have a power problem? The answer is probably yes. He's been going the distance regularly, so we need to see how he goes from there. But in the end, Washington gets the decision win. And what have we learned from this fight? Right, first of all, we've learned that Eddie Chambers is completely finished. Any talk of him wanting to get back onto the title scene is just gone completely. I think the prime of Chambers 7-8 years ago, that was 7-8 years ago. Now, this is the twilight of his career, and I would say he's finished. And possibly against a more dangerous opponent, he would have got stopped. Like Deontay would have iced him. A lot of other guys would have iced him. Maybe he has a position as a gatekeeper, and he might be over the distance, but it's up to him how he wants to go. But I don't think he is relevant in the division any longer. Okay, what we learned about Gerald Washington is that he's a reasonable boxer. He's actually a reasonable boxer, considering he has almost no amateur experience. He's obviously converted from a different sport, but he is actually a reasonable boxer. He's got good movement and he's got a good jab. He might lack power, but he's got good movement and he's got a good jab. So there is the potential for him to kind of make some waves in this division and have some decent fights. Is he ready to kind of make that step up? Now, we discussed, like in the preview video, we discussed in a video that I did when I kind of mentioned Gerald Washington, that in recently we've seen a couple of the American guys get up to world level kind of before their time, in Charles Martin, Dominic Brazil, and Washington. He's obviously, because he's got that physique, he has got a bit of charisma actually. I've seen a few interviews. He seems like a sound guy. So there's the potential for him to kind of make that leap, that big leap. But personally, I would say give him a few more fights, few more decent. He's like last couple of fights have been against decent opponents. I would say keep that trend going, keep building him, keep building his experience. His ranking's going to improve. So I think there's some good positives here for Gerald Washington moving forward. I don't think he's ready for the top guys yet, but I don't know. Within 12 months, he could be ready for an assault on the top guys. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment below, and this has been With Just 15 Defeats.